Warning, I am unusually candid in this video, and you might be uncomfortable if you're not used to seeing me like this. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey Laowinners, it's Laowinners here, another video. And you may be wondering why I'm standing in the middle of typhoon winds on a cliff in the middle of Asia. Well, that's because it reminded me of a story. Oh yeah, and the Hello Kitty helmet. I want to tell you guys why I actually moved to China in the first place. So come on, let's go. So once upon a time, there was a little boy named Sea Milk, and it was before he got that name. And since this video is all about truths and something I've never brought up before, about why I actually moved to China, I figured I'd go on a little trip down memory lane and begin to unravel the story that you guys have asked for so many times. So, let's begin. I was about 22 years old, and I was in a very, very small town in upstate New York. I grew up there and also California most of my life. But in that time period of becoming an adult, I have always been fascinated with other cultures, other places, and just, I don't know, travel in general. And even though I wasn't really a traveler myself, growing up in a tiny little town, I definitely fancied myself as the kind of person that one day would get out of that little town and go see the world. So when I was in university, I ended up backpacking through Europe, and I backpacked through a ton of countries. And I remember this one little moment, this little instance, when I was on the train in Finland, looking out the window, knowing that this trip was about to be over, watching the trees go by, and just thinking to myself, why do I have to go home? Why does this have to stop, right? So I finished my computer science degree, and I decided that I was going to settle down. I was in a serious relationship at that point in my life. I should probably just get a job doing some computer networking stuff, because that's what I majored in, and that's the end, right? Maybe I can do a couple trips every now and then when I get some vacation from work. But it wasn't that simple. And this is the part I always leave out. But it's been so many years, and you guys have been with me on YouTube for so long, I decided I finally wanted to tell you actually what happened. Let's switch it up a little bit though. This is literally the soundtrack of my nightmares. So there I was, a computer science graduate, and I had a long-term girlfriend at the time. And this is the part where I always left out. I never want to tell people about this part because it makes me sound like a really bad guy, and maybe in that circumstance I really was. I had been dating this girl for quite a long time, and for some reason I just couldn't get over the fact that I was going to settle down and get a job and have a stable career and buy a house and all this kind of stuff when I was only 22 years old. I thought I was a little bit too young to do that, but for some reason I just thought that's what you were supposed to do. So I proposed to my girlfriend. I didn't do the logical thing and try to find myself and even travel with her or talk about it. I just proposed to her. I literally blindfolded her and took her to the beach and proposed to her. And of course she was happy, she was in love with me, everything was great. She called her parents and her family, all this kind of stuff, and we set up a wedding. We got all the invitations out, she got her wedding dress, I bought the cake and booked the church and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I can't believe, I thinking back at that, I'm like, I can't believe I made that decision, but I did. Now, throughout this entire process, for some bizarre reason, I was obsessed with the idea of continuing to go abroad. So almost like a separate consciousness, not like I would ever do that, just like when you go and you look at really expensive cars that you can't afford, or you watch people's lives that are better than yours seemingly, and you just fantasize about that. So I found out that you could teach English abroad. You could go to a different country. And as a little fun thing, I was like, you know what would be a cool country would be Taiwan, because I was kind of interested in China, but because I wasn't like a Japan weeaboo or anything like that. I thought Japan was cool, but I thought Taiwan was more accessible in terms of being able to learn a culture and everything. It seemed more inviting, and also it wasn't crazy. It wasn't like a communist, dictatorship country like China, where I thought, you read the news and watch the news and you think it's a pretty dangerous place. So I chose Taiwan as my object of fantasy to move abroad. And I just kind of jokingly just put up a not jokingly, but kind of like, how to say, just like almost like a fantasy. Like I said, I put up my resume on these job forums in Taiwan, but it wasn't hiring season or anything. It's getting closer and closer and closer to my proposed wedding with my fiance. I'd say it's about 2 weeks out. And I don't know what it was, but that night I woke up with a freezing cold sweat. I was shivering and shaking, and my whole body was drenched in sweat. And I sat up in bed almost like that Don't Wake Daddy game. It was like a frickin' cartoon. And I had this moment of clarity where like I didn't feel drowsy or anything from sleeping. I stood straight up on my bed and I go, what in the actual hell am I doing? And I literally, the next morning, I'm not even kidding, I swear to God, the next morning I drove to her apartment and I said, this isn't gonna happen. And I broke up with her. I'm not even joking. I'll leave out the mushy details, but she was devastated. And I felt so bad, but for some reason I just couldn't shake the feeling that I should not be doing this. And I apologized profusely. I did everything I could to help her get her life back in order before I left, but she ended up just running away to Florida, where her parents had just moved. And that's the last I ever saw of her. And I felt like I had done something horrible, but also like immensely relieved. And weirdly enough, literally 2 days after that, I got a phone call from an English school, like a school that hires foreigners, not in Taiwan, but in China, in Huizhou, in Guangdong, where I met my wife and where I ended up settling down. And this British woman calls me and she's like, hey, I saw your forum. I know this is not your target, area where you want to go, but would you want to take a job? And it was like for like $500 a month or something ridiculous. I put down the phone and I bought a plane ticket and got my visa like literally right after I hung up the phone. I got all my application stuff in. I flew out 2 weeks later and the rest is history. But I would say the reason that I moved to China and the reason that I moved in general was because I wasn't ready to do what you're supposed to do. So if there's anything to take away from this story, it's number one, I was a dick. And I feel really bad about that, but don't feel too bad. She's happily married with a child now. But if there's anything to take away from this, it's that don't rush into decisions if you're not ready, number one. And number two, sometimes doing something so ridiculous that all of your friends and family think you're absolutely insane for doing, moving abroad, don't think that it's out of the realm of possibility, because it's something I would have never dreamed of doing, but I totally made happen, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm happily married with a daughter and another child on the way to the most wonderful woman in this entire world. And I couldn't imagine my life without them, and I couldn't imagine my life without this experience that I've had. So through the ups and downs, through all the crazy, crazy stuff, if you're new to the channel, go back and watch some videos. Through all the crazy stuff that's happened this past 10 years or so, I never regret it once. It's been the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. I wanted to say thank you guys for being with me this entire way and being with us the entire way. It's been this weird, bizarre story of growing up. And I put a lot of it on YouTube, which is another thing that I probably, most people, say I'm going to come to regret, but I just think it's super important, and it could help a lot of people kind of figure out what they want to do with their life. So I want to say thank you so much, Laowinners, and I want to say, if you like this video, go downstairs and give it a like. But if you want to see a lot of stuff that I can't talk about, I post daily on patreon.com/Laowinners. You can also support the channel that way. And I want to say thank you so much, Laowinners, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.